To the May 28th meeting of the Community Services Associates Board of Directors. I want to welcome everyone to the live stream who is watching, and welcome our guests and staff who are on the Zoom meeting with us. This morning's meeting is being live. Welcome to the May 28th meeting of the Community Services Associates Board of Directors. I want to welcome everyone to the live stream who is for those who are watching, as we indicated in the notices of the meeting, you may ask questions of any of the board or staff who are on the meeting today by sending your questions to questions@csacpines.com. We will take a 5-minute or so recess after the meeting is adjourned, and we'll come back and answer all those questions as they have been grouped. So we're going to try to avoid repeat questions, but we encourage you to ask questions of the board relating to anything you hear today or any other questions you may have. We've got staff and board members who are going to be reading those questions, collating and curating them into a series of questions which we will answer in that post-adjournment meeting. So feel free to send them. Questions must be asked during the meeting. There won't be an opportunity to ask any after we recess. So if you have questions, please feel free to do so. With that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ms. Adams, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do have a quorum.
Great. I'd like to start by ratifying the approval of the Board of Directors meeting minutes of April 28th, 2020. These were sent around and by email. We got a necessary approval, but I'd like to get that approval ratified. Are there any additional questions or concerns about those minutes? If so, raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll call I'm sorry, David Pardue, did you have a question or concern?
No, I'm sorry. I thought you said raise your hand if you want to vote.
Okay. Well, do I have a motion to ratify the approval? So moved. Adams, and second by JR. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Any opposition? That motion carries. Next is my chair's remarks. I'm going to keep it brief. Since our last meeting, a lot more has happened than one might have expected in a month. We had a series of committee meetings, which I'm pleased you will hear the reports from the committee chair about. Our revenue task force met many times over the course of that month, and you will hear an interim report from that task force. The Heritage Group, we met on a regular basis with the folks from the Heritage Foundation and the tour, and I'm pleased to say that Steve Wilmot will be giving a report on where the foundation, the tour, with the benefit of CSA's input, has come up in terms of protecting the players, the participants, and the community from potential increased risks. As many of you know, last weekend was a very busy weekend in Hilton Head generally and Sea Pines, and we were able to accommodate through an interim solution most of the parking for the folks who live in Sea Pines or are resident in Sea Pines over the weekend. And you'll hear today more about what we're trying to do as a longer term solution for the summer. And most important to my family, I got a haircut. So that was the big progress we got this month. That's my chairman's report. If there are any questions, if not, I'll turn to the president's remarks. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I would normally do during this time is start with my staff directors, let those folks go through and give a report, and we will do that. They are the folks that do the work, and I think it's important for the board and the community to hear from them. But we do have Steve Wilmot waiting, and can we bring Steve into the picture now?
We can, yes.
Let's do that. And I'd like to call on Steve once we get him up and running to give us an update on the Heritage, where things stand.
Can you all hear me?
We can hear you, Steve.
You need to activate your video, please.
Let me just see where. How's that?
Excellent.
I apologize. I'm better not being seen, but good morning, and Larry, thank you and the board and Sam and your team for allowing me to update us on the most recent, I guess you can say, the RBC Heritage 2.0. But one thing I've learned is never say never. And but again, it's something that we're certainly excited about, and especially be in this wonderful community that I call home myself and things as well. But just a little bit of an update. I know the safety and the security is the biggest concern, and it certainly is with us, as it was in April. Our number one concern then was the safety and well-being of all, let alone the local residents, but also all of our guests that we're bringing in. And the interesting thing from April to now is the fact that we had, we normally in April we have over 135,000 people, and here what we're looking at somewhat controlling is, and you'll hear me reference the bubble a couple times, but we're only looking at about 1,000 people that will be within the couple bubbles of in our control and things. But again, what happened, prior to back in March 17th, just as a refresher too, we were planning, but we were optimistic about the tournament, but the decision in canceling the tournament was the correct one. And for the reasons that I had mentioned, from safety and the health and well-being of all. And at that time, there was no opportunity, but then a couple of weeks later, there was an opportunity to possibly have this event. And we looked at it going, yes is the answer. What's the question? Let's see if we can figure this out. So, and that's what has gotten us here today. And knowing that we'll be returned back to golf and be a part of things. But in touching on more or less some of the concerns of the community, but when I say community, not just Sea Pines, but throughout the town and things too, is the protocols and procedures that will be put in place. And the PGA Tours worked with federal and state public health officials to have an intensive plan in place to secure the safety of those here. We certainly know how busy the island is right now, and but what's going to happen is there's multiple levels of testing. The players and the caddies, especially, that are a part of the bubbles, and the tour officials and staff will be tested prior to coming here, and then will be tested here but not on site. We are going outside of the resort, the plantation, to have the testing, the registration, both the players and caddies elsewhere. At that time, the results, which should be noted too, is the testing and the thermal testing that will be done on site, which I'll talk about, is all being handled by third parties. So it does not affect any of the resources of our local medical providers and things too. And I must admit too, the Hilton Head Hospital with Jeremy Clark's been tremendous and has been a huge asset to us, but also working with the tour with some of these plans. But there'll be 2 third parties handling the testing. Also, when I say that, so they'll be tested, will not be able to come onto the property until the results are back, and then they'll be able to come into that bubble, which is really the Harbortown Golf Links, the clubhouse, which is on lockdown that week just for tournament for the players and the caddies and the officials. That will take place. And then there's the essential volunteers, staff, there's another core group of about 200 to 300 that will be tested as well prior to, and then through the week will be thermal tested as well, each and every day, entering, and then also filling out a questionnaire. All of our volunteers, which I'll touch on a little bit here too, as well as staff, as well as the players, as well as the caddies, as well as the CBS officials and all too, will have to answer a questionnaire of it's being encouraged safe at home, but they'll have to answer some questions with regards to what they did the evening before and all, so that in case there is, would not be allowed on the ground. So within that bubble that we're talking about, you have about roughly 500 people that will be tested that are prior in the week. And then the other non-essential, I should say, but some outside, whether it's staff, possibly some other volunteers, will be thermal tested each and every day, but it will not be a part of, they'll be within that bubble. So The players and caddies, again, like I said, are encouraged to, they've been discouraged. They've been told they're not bringing their families. There are not agents involved. So where we usually have 135,000 people during the tournament with sponsors and spectators, we're looking at a very, very controlled environment of roughly 1,000 people. So that's where some of those things have happened. And now, fortunately, too, to let you know through communication as well, CSA, the resort, the town, the mayor, Steve Riley, Jeremy Clark, our governor, our state officials have been very much engaged. DHEC have been engaged with the tour, along with Sean McManus, president of CBS Sports, to make sure that this environment is ready to showcase to the world. We'll have 1 billion viewers being able to have access to watch this event in June. But so from the testing, that's very important. The safety, healthy, well-being of all is extremely important, and that we are in the process of controlling that environment, kind of a bubble within a bubble. Now, to talk about outside the bubble, or I'll stay inside the bubble, some things from an operation side that you'll certainly see from a community is we will start next week. We're going to do the exterior of the golf course on the property lines, double rope and staking in areas throughout the golf course for the safety and well-being. There is some operational things that will be happening too. CBS will be in town. We will be setting up the operations of the CBS compound too, under their strict guidelines too of social distancing as well. They'll have less of the staff. Unfortunately, some of the talent that has normally been here will be doing it from elsewhere, but Jim Nance and others will be here. But there'll be TV towers placed around the golf course, as long as along with the official scoreboards that you see traditionally as well, will be placed in the next 2 weeks really. And then so that's from the operation side. PGA Tour Entertainment is having their own separate little compound this year, just because of the social distancing, which they have their own protocols that they have to follow, whether it's CBS or the tour, as we are certainly following ours with the tour. Security wise, for the sake of the spectators and all too, if you're a property owner on the golf course, you have every right to sit and enjoy and watch and all too. We do discourage, the big parties for the sake of social distancing, but that's certainly your prerogative, or however. Security wise, and working with Toby McSwain, which is working with the Sheriff's Department, working with the State Highway Patrol, PGA Tour Security, SLED, the FBI, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to have the same, plus our rental, the hourly coastal security we work with. We'll have the same security presence that we've had in the past with 135,000 spectators. We are sensitive to those interfering or coming into the golf course areas, but also down Plantation Drive in some areas, because there will be people wandering around. The resort is extremely busy now, or I should say Sea Pines. It will be certainly in June as well, but the presence of security will be the same. So we will have that under control. And the only people you'll see on TV are those, if we do see someone walking in flip-flops and a t-shirt holding a beer, we know they're not supposed to be there. So we'll be addressing that. So, but I appreciate the time. I appreciate the support we've gotten. Please know, leading into April, let alone leading into June, it's easy to pull the plug and cancel this overnight, but you can't plan overnight. And that's something that we've continued to do. And yes, there is the possibility, but we're planning on having a very, very, very special event in June, kind of getting not back to the norm, but back to maybe the new abnorm. But if we could be a part of the process, which we'll be a part of the solution of getting us back and showcasing this wonderful community, this wonderful island around the world, we're excited about that opportunity.
Thank you, Steve, very much.
Thank you for all of your continued support, Larry and Sam and Toby and your whole team in this community. We're excited about things.
And just to reaffirm, there will be ropes, double ropes, so that people will not be allowed to get anywhere closer to the golf course than their property line. And presumably people won't be coming into the community because I gather we'll have barriers for cars and even bikes at locations where otherwise people would be walking in a typical tournament day.
Yes, I mean, we're basically really controlling it like we have in the past. We're not utilizing a lot of the lots as we reference 1, 2, 3, and 4 when you come in the main gate of Sea Pines. We are using lot 4 for volunteers and some support to get them down here. We have a full field. Everyone's going to be basically parked on the campus down here on site between the tennis courts, and working with the resort. We're utilizing the entire tennis facility. We're using the entire clubhouse for the media center and some other things, the player dining and the caddy dining, some things that we normally don't do. And then, but outside we will have the presence. The rope and stake will be down property lines. We're doing it early so that if there are property owners and there's questions or concerns, we want to address it. And we're working with the Sea Pines Resort and Kerry Corbett and his staff to identify, make sure we're doing the proper things. There'll be some tweaking with that, but and then the biking, we used to have bike parking down on site. We're not going to have that because again, you can't be on the golf course, but if you are going down Plantation, or if you're back on Baynard, you're looking at golf, there's those things that people are going to still continue to do that. And there's a little bit of an inconvenience back there on Baynard Cove Road, but that site works extremely well, and it's CBS certainly likes it, and they'll be coming in. They'll be there in that little 10-day that they'll be gone by Tuesday after the tournament, and we'll get it back in shape as we did last year.
JR, you had a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Steve a question in regards to people love this tournament, and people naturally are gravitated towards it. There are hundreds of houses on the golf course, all around the golf course. What provisions are we taking to secure the access from all those houses? Because there are going to be parties, there are going to be all sorts of things that just people naturally do. I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Well, we have a plan in working with Toby, our coastal security, that we'll have marshaled, we'll have state highway patrol with these groups. We'll have security in advance of these groups too, to identify, I hate to say that term, hotspots, but those areas as well. But that's a major concern. It is from an optics side of things for obvious reasons too. For RBC has concerns. CBS as well was very sensitive of the fact of all of a sudden they're filming a player and there's a deck party out there and it's going to happen. But that is a priority of ours, safety and the health and well-being of everybody. But then security is a part of that. We're not selling any hot dogs, and we're not, entertaining any sponsors, unfortunately, like we have in April. But the priority is those two areas.
And Steve, I'll say this hopefully for those who are listening and our Sea Pines community generally. I think the Sea Pines community has been particularly sensitive to social distancing. I know my friends don't want to get together with 8 and 10 people on a deck, even if there's room, because you don't have the room to stay apart. So JR, one hopes that those who live around the golf course will be just as sensitive to social distancing and not invite 40 people to a deck that can only accommodate 5 if they're social distancing. And so the parties should hopefully be smaller. That's a word of caution from in terms of how to maintain the health of the people who are living here, is to simply maintain social distancing on your backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. You're correct, Larry. And I know some of the rental companies, I know the resort is doing this, but they're notifying everybody from who's staying at the inn as well as those rental properties that, social distancing is front and center and first and foremost. So, and as well as we've communicated with other rental companies.
And it'll be very hard for outsiders to get in because they won't have a ticket to get on the grounds to start with. So they won't be able to get there any place easily. It's
the first time I've ever said we're sold out, Larry, which is, it's exciting. It's going to be completely different, certainly. But I can tell you one thing, for those that will be at home or will be at some of our our watering spots around the island. It is going to be a tremendous feel, which will be exciting for people to be able to tune in and see what's happening here at Harbortown and the Sea Pines community and on Hilton Head Island. And hopefully we can be a part of jumpstarting things and getting things back. Even though you can see the island right now, it's jumping as we know, but certainly again, and please know from me that safety and well-being is number one and front and center for all of us.
Carolyn Adams had a question.
What's going to be the policy on people bringing lawn chairs to in more of the open spaces? I realize they have to be on the other side of these stanchions. I don't know where the stanchions are going to be, but a lot of people I talk to in the community have a feeling they still might be able to do this or not do this. Just wondered what I see Toby shaking his head, but just wondered if we can get maybe some clarification on that policy.
Well, again, open space is open space, but if you're sitting on your property line, if there's a house or a home, and I know you live down in the Harbortown area and all too, but we can't control that if they're on their property. Certainly when in years past, when people brought chairs, we had the control of being able to take those chairs in the evenings and take them away from the golf course. But again, this is going to be working with the community, and Toby has been very engaged in all of our meetings too. And we'll certainly identify hotspots if there are some concerns, and that's one of the important things with the rope and stake lines too. I mean, we're trying to do it ahead of time because we know there'll be some people that might go out there and try to move it or do some things too. But we're going to stay on the property lines. We don't want to interfere with the property lines of the owners, but then the golf course is private property of Sea Pines. So,
Thank you.
And Mark King had a question. We'll unmute you. Mark, wait till you're unmuted. Down right.
Be utilizing volunteers this year?
Oh yes, yeah, Mark, and actually, what's just shows you how wonderful this community is in giving back, and certainly we couldn't do what we do without volunteers. But we identified we don't need all the committees that we've had in the past, and we've identified walking scorers, our couriers, and all those key positions have been filled. And we have actually, which has been interest too, we've had some additional interest from outsiders that normally wouldn't be able to volunteer, and we hope to get some of those engaged too, so that they'll be able to support us in future years in April. It's with the school year, with the summer as it is, we have students and younger people as well as teachers that are available as well. But we've got if you're interested, please feel free to reach out to us. But we're at a maximum capacity right now, which is and that's pretty much 90% of the volunteers that we've had on the committees in years past have signed up and are excited about working.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Do you have any other questions? Steve, it looks like I know you may hear from the community. I think this has been a great report, and if it spurs some additional questions, I'm sure they can reach you at the Heritage Foundation office or an email.
Yes, we have a general mailbox we will certainly address. And, Larry, thank you again for this opportunity. I'd be more than happy to give updates anytime. And again, appreciate all of Sam and Toby's efforts and the support of the tournament. And, excited everybody tune in and, in June, and it'd be exciting for all.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Mr. President, back to you.
If I could go ahead and call on Toby McSwain, that's a pretty good transition to ask Toby to give us an update. Toby, do you have some additional things you'd like to discuss regarding the Heritage? Start from there and then work into the rest of your update, please.
Okay, good morning. Thanks, Sam. Just to follow up on Steve, Carolyn brought up a point. There is no areas along the golf course unless you're on private property to view golf. So prime example, the CSA open space, that's 13 green. You can't drag lawn chairs out into CSA open space and watch golf. You've got to stay on your own private property. The leisure paths that border the golf course on some of the tee boxes, you can't stand on the leisure path and watch golf. It's no stopping or standing. So we are going to control these areas, and that's why Steve mentioned that they're roping the golf course well in advance. So we will be looking out for that. The areas that we have roped in the past for parking, we're going to do that. Will take place again this year as well. Same in past tournaments for car parks in areas it's not supposed to be in. It won't be there when they get back. We will tow it. So we have wrecker services that will be available during that time. Hang tags. We have already started hang tag distribution. We're doing similar to what we have done in previous years, with the exception if you're on Plantation Road, which would be your Calabogie Cays, your Planters Woods, your Spanish Moss, Twin Pines. Those areas traditionally in the past we have issued hang tags to. We're not doing that this year. Normally in the past, that Plantation Drive is being used by buses coming from off-site. We're not having any buses this year. So if you live on Plantation up to Lighthouse, we're not issuing any hang tags to you. There will be no roadblocks. The traditional roadblock that we have at Greenwood and Plantation is not going to be there. The next one would be at Plantation and Lighthouse. So hang tag distribution is going very well. And we ask that the property owners contact us via we have a website set up. Amanda can touch on that, where you can fill out your hang tag request. We've had quite a bit so far, which is good. We get them out well in advance of tournament week. Let's talk about Harbortown. Harbortown Lot 16 at Liberty Oak is going to be open during the week of the tournament. We will be selling, as we have always in the past. We've sold daily passes during tournament week because Seapine Center's open, Cossett's open down at Salty Dog. So we always have sold daily passes during tournament time. We will do that again this year. The only exception is when Harbortown fills up with cars and there's no parking spots available, we are going to restrict access to Harbortown. So in order to get to Harbortown after the roadblock goes up, you're going to need a hang tag. So a regular property owner that lives somewhere on the South Beach area is not going to be able to drive into Harbortown once we put the roadblock up. That's why we've issued the hang tags to the ones we have, because I would anticipate if it's anything, Harbortown is going to be anything like it was this past weekend, it's going to fill up early in the morning. And as spots become available, we'll let a few more cars down to kind of backfill those spots, but we anticipate Harbortown going to be very busy. There's not any bands playing. There's no outside activities. We're not advertising anything. Steve may be able to touch on this, but there's no events taking place in Harbortown. So if you're going to go to Harbortown, you probably have to go early and get to be able to get a spot. Emergency one-shots. If you live in and around Harbortown, just in previous years, we issue what we call a one-shot, which gets you one way through the roadblock to go take care of an issue. So if you had an electrical issue or a leaky pipe or something, HVAC, something that needs to be handled, those people are not going to have any problems. They'll need to come to CSA to get a one-shot pass to get them through a roadblock if the issue is behind one of the roadblocks. So same as in the past, that won't be any problem with getting those people down to those locations. Landscaping and construction along the golf course. We're going to restrict around the golf course during the week of the tournament up until Monday through Wednesday. If you've got landscaping, light landscaping that needs to take place, we ask you to knock that out early. Once tournament play starts on Thursday, it's just like in previous years. We don't want nail guns going and saws running in the backyard of homes that border Harbortown when we have tournament time going on. So we ask everybody to cooperate with us on that. Guest passes. A guest pass will not get your guest through a roadblock. So if you're a property owner that has been issued a hang tag and you're having a function, you use your hang tags to get your guest to your home. They can ride a bike. Leisure pass are not going to be closed. It will be restricted in some areas where you may have to walk your bike. But if you got guests and you're having functions, they can ride a bike, but you'll have to use your hang tags to get your guests to your house if you're in and around Harbortown. Sam, I think that's really all I have as far as tournament goes.
Toby, before you go on, are there it may be worth asking questions now so we don't lose them.
Okay.
Barry?
Yeah, Toby, it's Barry. One of the things, I live on Twin Pines, and I probably Cary, I don't know that it affects Cary either, but there's a real tendency for people to park, on Twin Pines there. It usually has been roped, in the past, just because of the proximity to Plantation and Lighthouse that really gets you to holes number 1 and number 2. I just raised that as something that historically, has been a challenge and probably why hang tags were maintained.
Yes, there will be some roping and stake. I'll check. I'm not sure if we're doing that in your area. We have requested numerous no parking signs through the tournament that's going to go up just before the tournament in those sensitive areas. So we asked the property owners, if you live in those areas and next thing you know that there is a car parked where it's not supposed to be, give us a call and we'll deal with it. Unfortunately, with the way parking is allowed in the community today, if there's not a no parking sign, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not appropriate to park there. So those areas that we don't want cars in, we're going to put no parking signs up so that we can deal with them. If a property owner is having a function and it's not really tournament related, but it's really a property owner having guest park and it's in a really a sensitive area, we allow the parking. So the parking we will deal with, but if there's an issue, don't hesitate to give us a call on that.
Thank you.
JR?
Along that same line, Calabogie K Road is the back entrance. The causeway is the back entrance to Harbortown. I was wondering if you could take a look at that because tons of cars will park out there and they'll walk through, see lofts into Harbortown.
We
So
can
take a look at that.
That was one area that we are going to put signs in. We do know that they walk through that little wooded area to get out to, and Russell has cleaned it out. Yeah, we will put some parking signs, if not rope, in that area just to make sure that no one's walking into Harbortown. Because I think Harbortown is going to fill up very quickly.
Definitely is.
And the boat traffic, Steve and Carrie can talk on the boat slips. There's a lot of rentals taking place. So we're expecting Harbortown to still be busy as well.
Larry, I got a question.
Thank you.
Scott?
Toby, I'm just trying to think through this thing about Harbortown and parking. I mean, I don't know how many cars can park in Harbortown, maybe 100 cars total if you put them everywhere. Walk me through the thought process. I'm just trying to think through, would we be better off having no parking down there so that anybody who wants to get there has to walk or ride bike or, run the trolleys or something. But I just see a lot of angst and potential problems with people racing down there at 6 o'clock in the morning to park their car and all of that sort of stuff. Would it not be easier just to have a no cars policy period? I mean, if you're staying there, you either got to ride a bike or maybe we decide to run the trolleys until there's so many people there or something. I don't know. I just,
Scott, I think
like Barry said, you're going to have people go down there and try to pull in these different areas and then the condo projects and so forth. So did y'all walk through that of potentially just not having any cars in Harbortown?
I'm going to ask Steve Birdwell. I know Steve's got his hand up and wanted to respond.
Yeah,
to that.
we can respond to that, Scott. We're going to need to put a couple of security guards there on those lots, but making sure that we can get customer cars to Harbortown. As you know, the merchants have been were closed for a couple of months. Our water sport vendors were completely shut down. The resort's going to be busy, and we got to do the best we can to try to get customers to all those businesses. So that's why the lots are not being used as part of the tournament. And, we're going to need to try to control it. We got to get all the employees out of Harbortown and provide some access to get them to their businesses and to their stores. But we really need to do, it's going to be Father's Day weekend. We know the resort's going to be busy in addition to the tournament. And we've got to make sure we can get customers to the Harbortown area.
But would that makes sense, but then should we restrict it to non-residents or something? And, the point is, if you get a bunch of residents go down there early in the morning and that shot, you know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to think through that for the best of y'all. Obviously, the resort needs to have people in there. So
Also,
going to try to get talking to Sam and Toby about the possibility if the trolleys are running at that time, which we assume that there will be some level of ridership going with the trolleys, that maybe the trolley going to Harbortown starts earlier than 4 o'clock to assist with maybe employees and other visitors that want to get into Harbortown and don't necessarily have to drive their car. And so if we need to help support some of that effort, then we'd like to do that, because that could be a big help to Harbortown during the tournament time.
I might note, I think one of the things CSA can also do, and I know Toby's done a great job of working, and Amanda will, and with Sam, we can do a great job of getting the word out that there are no places to watch the tournament. I mean, if you're going to someone, if you're lucky enough to be invited to a deck, that's one thing. But if we keep getting the word out that there is no public place to watch the tournament, the reason to go to Harbortown for the tournament becomes much less, and you get more people going for the reason that Steve's got them there, which is to enjoy the stores that are trying to do business. So if we can do a good job among ourselves and also through our communications of reminding folks that there are no tickets and there's no places where you will easily be able to watch the tournament. As Toby said, we're going to be blocking off the bike paths where there are tees and greens to see. We're going to be roping off, I think Steve and Toby both mentioned, the public areas where you might think you could put your beach chair. But if it becomes more apparent that there's no place to go to watch the tournament unless you're lucky enough to be one of the 6 people sitting on someone's deck, hopefully that message getting out will discourage people from trying. Toby, I think, any other questions for Toby on the tournament? If not, Toby, what else you got?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. I mean, as everyone is well aware, our business has definitely picked up in the security department. We've had, just since last Thursday, we've had almost 500 more calls for service than we traditionally have had in previous weeks. It's been busy. I wouldn't say we've had some serious calls. We've had multiple DUI arrests inside of Seapines. The domestic animals continue to be a problem with people letting their pets roam free. Fireworks, our improper parking or parking in areas that they really shouldn't be has increased. We've had some motor vehicle collisions. The noise complaints have gone up quite a bit with the number of renters that are in here right now. Our wildlife calls have picked up. Our beach officer was very busy on the beach with anywhere from digging holes to excessive drinking, disorderly digging holes in the dune. It's been very busy, as you could expect, especially with the number of people that we have here right now. And we think that's going to continue. The beach club, we had an officer assigned starting last Friday through Monday at the beach club, assisting with issues there, which there were numerous issues there as well. We will have that again there this weekend. We have a parking attendant assigned to Plantation Golf Club in the green space, helping park cars to maximize that capacity to get people to the beach club. We also are utilizing Hilton Head Prep parking. That will continue this weekend with a parking attendant there. And there's also Porta Johns at that location as well. So all in all, security is running well. It's busy. We did hire 3 additional personnel for gate positions. And we still have 3 additional patrol positions available, which are desperately needed right now. Because as the summer continues and events start to occur, we're going to need additional manpower. But all in all, from the security side of the house, things are going really well.
Toby?
Yes, sir.
Are the incidents that you're having beyond what they'd normally be in a normal place, in a normal time, like every summer when you have all these issues? Are they more or less or the same?
The rental season really is like we flipped a switch this past weekend. It just like went from 0 to 100 all overnight. But our calls for service go up during our busy season. When the renters are here, they're swimming in the swimming pool at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's just that goes along with our community. And I'll share this, and I've said this before. When I first got here in 2013, we had anywhere from 7 to 900 short-term rental units. 8 years, we now have 2,100. So we have more than doubled in the rental units that we have since I've started, and those problems with the rental that it comes with our with that type of business that we have, and we do. And I'm not. It is a problem, but I will say there's a lot of people that come here and vacation in Sea Pines that we never hear from and never cause a problem. But then we have those, and if you had a chance to watch or read the gallon packet of the 50,000 pounds of trash that got drug off the beach, and all the garbage cans were full at all the Sea Pines beach access point. That's our business now, and I don't think that situation is going to get any better anytime soon.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Bill Johnson, you have a question?
Yeah.
Toby, as you're well aware, Harbortown has become extremely busy. There seems to be, I don't think it's my imagination, a lot more unruly activities going on down here, from dogs not on leashes, but also public urination and loud music, just a lot of different things that are disruptive. My two questions: can you allocate more of your staff to the Harbortown area? And secondly, are you issuing citations for people that have dogs that are running around off leash?
Yes, we are citing people for dogs off leash. Just had this conversation with Sam this morning. We're going to have to hire more patrol people to cover these calls for service, because they definitely are going to increase as the summer goes on. I'm going to give you an example today, and we run a very thin patrol division as it is, and we've got to give people vacation time. People are going to be sick. So today I have 3 people working that I also have to relieve the gates and respond to calls for service. 3 patrol officers is not adequate coverage for Sea Pines when we're at 100% occupancy. So if you want the full service, I've got to have more staff. And I understand we're in the middle of a budget situation, but I can't. You can't get blood out of a turnip. I've got to have people to be able to respond to the calls for service. Your Sea Pine Center, your harbor towns, your South Beach needs to have more additional patrols in it. I cannot do it at today's level that I'm operating at. And people are not beating our door down to come to work inside of Sea Pine. It's hard to get the staff that we have. So we need more staff.
I think that's an issue that Sam, through your budgeting process and safety and security, will be looking at.
Well, in addition to that, as Toby mentioned, we had a conversation this morning about the number of folks we have in Sea Pines and short-term rentals, and just the volumes of traffic we're seeing in our commercial areas. And for the most part, 99% of the folks are well behaved. They're having a good time. It's that very small percentage that tends to let things get out of hand. But Toby is correct. We do have to put some additional resources to it. And so what we talked about is possibly bringing in some contract security to supplement Toby during the peak months, peak times during the summer, and putting them in the areas where we have the highest traffic and the most folks. I think, as Toby will tell you, a lot of times just having a person walking around as a presence does a lot to deter that 1% of the folks that may decide they don't want to behave and be good visitors and good guests. So we're going to work through that and work on that as we move into this. Public safety for us always needs to be first and foremost, and we're going to address this in a way that makes sense and gives Toby what he needs moving ahead.
Thank you, Sam. I think next report.
Amanda, do you mind going next so you can roll sort of into some of the issues Toby raised as it relates to communications and heritage and those things?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Larry, and the rest of the board as well. So I'll start with COVID just to make sure everybody has this link and the resource to this link. We, CSA, have a separate webpage set up for the coronavirus COVID-19 information. That is seapinesliving.com/coronavirus. That's where we're posting all of our updates that we send out through our mass email communications. They're also posted on our Facebook as well. So we encourage everyone to take a look at that webpage if they have not done so. The communications department as well is working hard to stay in contact with our local Sea Pines commercial operations and restaurant proprietors to keep information about their services and their businesses within Sea Pines, hours of operation, et cetera, is updated as we can. So we're actually continuing conversations with them on a regular basis to make sure we have that information updated. I'd like to thank all the commercial property owners who are providing us those updates. If you're watching this live stream or going to be watching the video after we get it posted and you are a commercial owner in Sea Pines and would like to be added to that list, please email us at info@csaseapines.com and I'd be happy to get that information updated related to the commercial operations in Sea Pines. Additionally, to better serve the community during COVID, we've implemented not only this Zoom feature that you're watching right now for our board meetings, but we also have some additional services online. So in addition to our mulch and delivery mailbox repair request that we already had online, we also now have our decal and IT card request renewals and replacement feature online. So that's been very helpful, I think, to the property owners. I hope they find it helpful as well. That request can be made at seapinesliving.com/request. If you ever have a question on, how to use the service or anything like that, feel free to call us or email us and we'll be happy to walk you through it. Toby mentioned this as well related to Heritage. We also have Heritage webpage set up. That's seapinesliving.com/heritage2020. That information page is full of resources, links back to the Heritage Classic Foundation. We will continue to build an FAQ as some of these questions that we've discussed today are finalized, and we'll put that information on that webpage as well. Hang tag information is on that page if you're in the restricted zone. Additionally, you can request hang tags online, like Toby mentioned. That website is located within that seapinesliving.com/heritage2020 page, but we also have an easy URL redirect for Heritage hang tag request at seapinesliving.com/hang tags. That's my update related to the COVID-19 operations and as well as Heritage. I'd like to now move into something I know we don't all want to talk about, but I just want to make sure it's top of mind. Hurricane season is already here for the most part. It does not officially start until June 1st, but Tropical Storm Bertha, I think, was a little bit of a test run for all of us to get our plans into gear for sure. So just be aware that hurricane season is approaching. Make plans now so you're ready if a storm does come our way. Additionally, a side reminder, it is turtle nesting season in Sea Pines as well. So let's make sure we're filling those holes, not only for the safety of the turtles, but also for the safety of the folks who use the beach. The turtle information is posted on our website as well. If you ever need to update your contact information with CSA, please reach out to us directly. If you maybe changed your notice of mailing address, maybe you previously before COVID might have been at a second property and now you're in Sea Pines a little bit more full time and need to update your information, email address, phone number, mailing address, etc., feel free to contact us. 843-671-1343 is our admin office line, and then info@csaseapines.com is our general email account. And just a reminder before I finish up, before I take questions from the board, if they have any, we are currently tracking the questions at csaseapines.com account right now. So we are taking questions during this meeting up until adjournment. So we do have some of those questions already received into that email account. So thanks to those of you who have already shot us those emails. If you're on the meeting right now during the live meeting, please feel free to email us those questions that you may have for board consideration at questions@csaseapines.com prior to the adjournment of the meeting. That's all I have, Sam.
Thank you, Amanda. Any questions for Amanda?
No.
Very good, Amanda. You're better than Toby. No questions. David Henderson, do you mind giving us your report?
Sure, no problem. Thank you, Sam, and good morning, everyone. Just wanted to give you a quick operations update for CSA. All of our CSA managed in-person events are currently canceled until further notice. The administrative office does remain closed to the public, and as Toby and Amanda had mentioned to you, we are able to service the vast majority of requests in Heritage hang tags. I would like to emphasize that those requests must be done online, and then also in order to pick them up, an appointment must be made. So whatever the folks can do to help us with that process is appreciated, but it seems to be working really, really well. The community center does remain unstaffed and the doors are locked. However, the Beaufort County Board of Elections will be conducting a statewide primary election at the community center on June 9th. Six Oaks continues to conduct essential operations. The parking lot, restrooms, and one-way boardwalks at Tower Beach, they do remain open. The pavilion at Tower Beach is currently closed, but we are working to reopen it as soon as possible for use that is compliant with relevant guidelines and requirements. And the Forest Reserve remains open. Just a couple quick comments as we move ahead. And if you're following a lot of the news in COVID, I'm sure you've noticed that, you know, today someone's telling you this and tomorrow somebody is telling you that, or in some cases the same person. And I just wanted to emphasize that, you know, as we do move forward, that this is a new phenomenon. Everyone, including the experts, are learning as we go. And science is a messy process, and it is a process. So we will all move forward together as we, you know, learn how to adapt and to operate under this. I continue to emphasize to everyone that continue to assume that everyone that you come in contact with is contagious and to practice appropriate social distancing at all times. I'll end by letting you know that our administrative staff continues to incrementally return to the office. Protocols are being developed to reestablish public access to the CSA building, but at this time we do not anticipate reestablishing public access to the CSA building until after the Heritage. Sam, that concludes my report. If anybody has any questions.
David, thank you very much, David. Just a reminder to the board that David has been serving as our point on changes necessary with COVID across our organization. He's done a great job. So David, thank you for that. Russell Fredericks, would you please give your report next?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Larry. Good morning, everybody. Firstly, I hope you and your family are safe and well during this crisis. And thankfully, we're starting to see some light here in the recent weeks, and we're able to start moving ahead and hopefully returning to what should be normal soon. I just wanted to make a few comments this morning, and some of this might sound like Groundhog Day to most, and I certainly don't mean to sound like a broken record, but we continue to experience drainage failures throughout our community essentially every time it rains. We're now up to almost 25 inches of rain in the last couple months. As Amanda mentioned, we just skirted a tropical system, and one we had before that did cause us a series of issues. We're working on a remedy for these drainage failures hand in hand with the town of Hilton Head and taking on some of these repairs ourselves, some of the smaller repairs. Work continues in South Beach at the entrance to the Salty Dog establishment where we have a failure and a major pipe there. Also work continues on Sandhill Crane drainage repairs. The Lawton Canal pump station, which is on Greenwood Drive right next to the CSA building, repairs continue on it, and we expect or hope to finish a majority of that work in the next week or so in regards to reinstalling the pumps at that location. One of the interesting things that we've seen over the last few weeks at our beach boardwalks is certainly the accretion of sand due to the unusually high winds. We've had a lot of calls into our office about this, about sand on top of the boardwalks. We've made our best efforts to remove that sand. However, the wind has certainly taken a strong hand. Right now, we're working with South Carolina DHEC and our beach trust to pursue a permit for some sand fencing as a temporary measure to control the sand accumulation. Certainly looking towards the future, we would need future funding to allow us to rebuild some of these boardwalks up and over the newly accumulated sand in many of these areas. And it's a lot of this is in areas from about beach walk number 19 through number 26. And then certainly we're seeing a lot of accumulation from number 39 to upwards of 47. So again, a lot of this has been in the recent weeks that we're continuing to monitor, and we'll hopefully installing some sand fence in the near term. Regarding our open space maintenance, ongoing operations continue. Our open space mulching will be in progress over the coming weeks and as weather permits. We'll also be starting to spray our mosquitoes throughout the community starting next week. We continue to see a uptick in mulch deliveries and landscape debris pickup throughout the community. Additionally, we've been assisting security with the operations of these parking lots that Toby mentioned earlier, Plantation Club and Hilton Head Prep, as well as Tower Beach over the last few weeks. And in addition, keeping the Tower Beach bathrooms clean at all times, 7 days a week. So our maintenance staff has been doing an outstanding job and responsive to all the needs throughout the community. So that concludes my report, and thank you for your time this morning.
I see a question from Jim Cassidy. Jim?
Russell, thank you very much. And Russell, could you give the board a sense, you come from what, Chief Operating Officer of Central Park in New York City for years and engineering background, et cetera. Could you score the level of concern you have about drainage? Maybe with 2 scores. One is the overall condition of drainage, like on a scale of 1 to 10. If 10 is optimum drainage systems, where would we? And what level of crisis do you think we're facing with drainage?
Well, that's a daunting question, but I'll, certainly in my 3rd season here, I've seen a progressive decline in the infrastructure, albeit the town has made best efforts to execute point repairs throughout the community as we have identified. But again, these are only point repairs. And what I mean by that, they're limited to perhaps 25, 50 feet, the repair of a control structure. We have 36 miles of pipe in sea pines and probably another 15 miles of ditches. Our staff have been out there jetting and cleaning and trying to keep up with this, but every day we walk in after a rainstorm, we have another failure. To answer your question, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being optimal, I'd probably be leaning towards about a 2 or a 3 at the moment in some areas of the community. Now, these is kind of situationally dependent. For instance, starting at Canvasback Road towards the Beach Club, we've had many, many failures. At Greenwood and Sea Pines intersection, beach walks in 25 and 26 have completely failed. So again, depending on the age of some of these pipes in certain areas of the community, the CSA through the years did replace some, but not enough. We were fortunate there is some concrete pipes that have greater durability. But again, like in the Harbortown area in Lighthouse Lane, for instance, there's a complete replacement that's necessary down there. So again, every week, every day, I see continued failures. So in terms of my scoring this, I would, in stating if it's a crisis, I would say it's certainly building in that direction, given the amount of failures I've seen over the last few months here.
Any other questions? Thank you. Sam, anything else to add on your report?
I want to thank Russell and his team for all they do in regards to maintenance and repairs, and also thank them for working with Toby's team and backing them up as we're trying to make sure that our public safety resources are out in the field doing the things they need to do. And Russell's folks have been great in helping with parking lots and those things. So Russell, thank y'all for that, going above and beyond and outside the normal scope of y'all's responsibilities. And we will continue to do that where we need to do it as a team. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sam, anything else from you before we go to finance?
Well, I've got Sandra. I want to see if Sandra's got anything for the board. Sandra's shaking her head no. She's filling me.
Thank you, Sam. No, nothing to bring to the attention. Just was nice to get every committee met since the last meeting. So committees are up and running and where they should be. All board meetings are on track. We have met all so far for CSA board meetings. We're compliant with the number that we should have held up to this point. So all is good.
Thank you, Sandra. Then last but not least on the list would be Victoria Shanahan, Director of Finance Administration. Victoria, happy to have you report or work with Mr. Borghese, who is also up next.
Before we do, because I think that's all part of the finance, I just wanted to note for the board and for those who are listening, Sam and I talked about the difficulties of having multiple open meetings where we're having the community coffee or community updates and the board meetings. And so at least while we're having these board meetings, we've decided to do the staff reports as part of the board meeting. I appreciate the patience of the board to listen and also the patience of the public, but I think it's very important for the staff to keep the community as informed as for the board. So thank you for the patience. It may extend the meeting a little bit, but I think it's an important way to get everyone together at one time. Now, Victoria and David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sam. I will be brief. The finance department we are collecting assessments that we have shut off property owners' ability to call in a pass for their guests, and boy, it has gotten their attention. So we had some collectability issues earlier this year, but we are now around less than 100 property owners who have not paid their 2020 assessments. And thank you to the resort, which has not happened in past years. Those properties that the resort is managing, they have reached out to them individually and said, hey, we can't rent your property because your passcode doesn't work. Well, that got their attention. So thank you. Thank you to Steve and Carrie and your team. That really made a big difference. Talking about gate revenues. The last time I gave a report was at the end of April, and April's numbers were looking pretty grim. We were down 71% over 2019 overall and 93% for daily passes. May has been a completely different month as we all experience every day. Through yesterday, our total gate passes are down 36% over last year. As far as daily passes, we're down 52%. To give you some specific numbers over the weekend, on Saturday, we were down only 6% as compared to the Saturday of last Memorial Weekend, and Sunday, 7%. So as we all can see, the tourists are here. One interesting fact, and I will just mention this, that year over year, for the month of May, property owners have called in 4% more passes this year. I guess they're just anxious to get their friends here and out and about. Just an interesting little data. As we have mentioned that we did receive a $1.1 million loan from the SBA. It is now our job to figure out how we're going to get approved for forgiveness. So unfortunately, the application for forgiveness is quite more complicated than the application to receive the funds. So I've been attending webinars and doing all kinds of research. And so we do feel very confident that we will qualify for most of, if not all of the forgiveness. Again, just as this time is, the rules keep changing. Right now, it's a 56-day window to spend the money. Now they're looking at possibly extending that to another 12 weeks. So fortunately, the applications are not due until July 1, or they're not even going to be accepted until July 1. So we do have some time. And finally, our audited financial statement for 2019, we still have not received it back from the auditor, but there are no issues. There was no management comments. There were no big adjustments to be made. It went through very well. And I hope to have that by the end of this week. And Mr. Borghese, can you back me up?
Sure can. Can I just do the Finance Committee report because it's kind of mixed?
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay, thank you. Finance Committee did meet this Tuesday on the 26th, and we had very good attendance. It was our first meeting since November of 2019. At that point in time, the committee reaffirmed its support for $2 per week beach trolley fee on short-term rentals. I understand that issue was tabled last year and is still open for board discussion. And so I'll let that, I think that's later on in our agenda. The Finance Committee reviewed our charter, and we had one amendment to the charter, which adds an additional task related to transactions outside the normal business of CSA to include a review and recommendations to the board involving anything such as loans, purchase of real estate, and the initiation of special purpose trust. This came about only because of the fact that we have had loans and purchases that did not go before the Finance Committee, and I think the Finance Committee has enough expertise and experience to be helpful in that regard. The Finance Committee also reviewed a report that I prepared on CSA investment portfolio as of April 30. The investments are within our stated policy guidelines for diversification of issuers as well as credit worthiness. No adjustments or investment transactions were recommended at that time. Can you still see me since I've just been?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Finance Committee discussed the financial results through March 31 and that were presented to in the April CSA board meeting, with an update from Victoria, who just explained what was happening with the gate through April as well as in May. So I'm not going to really repeat that. Obviously, the situation for the forgiveness of loan is a very fluid situation. It was only just yesterday we found out that there is a potential for the extension of time for the making the qualified expenditure. So we're all keeping our fingers crossed that we will get 100% forgiveness of that loan. We further reviewed the May gate pass revenues against the projections that we had made earlier and that we had reported at the last board meeting. And because of the spike in tourism in the month of May, we are doing better than our projection, which is a very good sign. But we also know that there are many variables such as good or bad weather, changing patterns of tourism, or just a pent-up demand that may abate at some point in time. And we clearly have no idea what the Heritage tournament might or might not do relative to our projections of gate revenues. Right now, if you look at the information, and if we can continue at the same pace that we're providing, I believe that with some adjustment to our operational expenses, such as either elimination or some deferral, our goal will be to offset the decline in revenues with the loan forgiveness and managing our operating expenses to achieve a break even. I think it's doable. Obviously, we don't know for sure, but I am optimistic. As a side note, you may have noted that personal injury attorneys are now on TV suggesting that commercial insurance policies may provide reimbursement for loss of business income. This is an area I know a little bit about from my past professional career, and I've also checked in with a number of my colleagues who are still in the business. So cutting to the chase, we do not have a claim. The Finance Committee spent a fair amount of time also considering our investment portfolio and what would be the best and highest usage of the cash that we are receiving from maturing investments. As a little bit of a backdrop, we have invested in a way to provide that what we call a ladder of maturities, where approximately $1 million of our investments mature each year. Current financial investments are offering less than 1% return. The 10-year treasury is about 0.7% right now. Finance Committee is unanimously of the position that the better use of funds today is to reinvest in our critical infrastructure. Given today's historically low raw material costs and the fact that contractors are desirous of maintaining their work crews, it is possible to see significant savings in doing major projects today rather than deferring them to a later time when the cost could be substantially higher. This is both an economic and common sense approach to our finances. Lastly, we agreed to schedule a June meeting to reevaluate all of our current policies as they relate to investments, maintenance of reserve funds, insurance coverage, and the assessment or other revenue producing opportunities. So we look forward to getting together again in the latter stages of the month of June. That's my report.
Thank you, David. And I think we will end up that some of the discussion you had at the Finance Committee is going to be board full discussion as part of our, under unfinished business of the task force interim report. Other than those issues, is there any questions from the board on David or Victoria's reports? Seeing none, we will move then into the other updates from the committees. JR, Architectural Review Board Liaison. Let me get you off mute.
I got it.
Okay.
Hey, thank you very much. ARB's continuing to operate on as we dealing with the COVID issues. We do Zoom meetings now, and it's working out, reasonably well. I have enclosed in your packet a ARB, CPINE dwelling unit density report, which you've got a copy of. Nothing really changed there. The report that we have for the first 4 months of activity for the ARB is 12 new single-family residences, 23 major additions, and 216 small additions. 7 pools, 4 commercial applications, new lots improved were 2, no demos, and that's the activity we've had. We're working through the issues of having to visit on Zoom, because ours is much more complicated, looking at plans and that sort of thing, but it seems to be working out well, and so we're happy with that. That's really my report.
Any questions for JR? Seeing none, David Ellis, Communications. Go ahead, David.
We had a committee meeting. We adopted a charter. I think most people see at least some change in the communication style with letters from the chairman and the president, and more information that's being put into the weekly reports. You'll see the efforts in communication with the questions and stuff at this meeting to bring in people who normally couldn't even attend a meeting. So everything is working to try to move forward to expand the information and the outsourcing and communications. That's it.
Any questions for David? Seeing none, Mr. Corbett, Gate Entry Committee.
Good morning. We had a meeting on May the 8th, and we did also approve our charter. The main change with our charter was committee size, and I think we increased our committee this year upwards of 5 or 6. And then Victoria Shanahan gave her report. I won't go into it. She's already done a better job than I was going to report on, because as of May the 8th, we were considerably down from what we are today, so I won't get into that. We discussed the beach trolley operation and the resort trolley operation. There again, that we're going to have further discussion at today's meeting, so I will wait for that further discussion. Toby McSwain reported that the ABDI contract that had been canceled, and that we had sent out to 11 vendors a RFP and are waiting on their response. We have a couple task force programs in place. Don Sigmund's chairing a Hilton Head Breeze Trolley about the possibility of the Breeze Trolley entering CPINEs. But due to what's going on with the corona, we have currently tabled that. Also, Don is chairing the possibility of looking at our bike delivery fees that we charge. We currently charge $1 per bicycle. And that was also tabled, and will be addressed in the future once we decide if we're going to be doing any additional increases in other fees that we might pursue this one as well. Bill Johnson chairs the task force on the Galleria shops and the CPINE Circle. And Bill, you can correct me or add to if you'd like, but we reported that the process to have the building removed while not giving up any of our developmental rights is ongoing. Attorney Chet Williams has given us a fee proposal that is being considered of pursuing this effort on our behalf. Also, the task force evaluating the CPINE Circle issues. There again, due to the coronavirus, that has kind of been in waiting. We're waiting on a proposal from our engineering group that we were very impressed with from Carmel, Indiana. And we have not yet received that, but that is part of what we're going to pursue with the task force. It was also noted that as of August 1st, 2020, the daily gate fee will increase from $8 to $9, and Amanda and Sam are working on an announcement that will be sent out to the community. There's also discussed whether we should amend the gate pass policy to allow RVs, recreational vehicles, to park overnight at residence. It was decided to leave the 4-hour loading and unloading policy that is currently in place and leave it as is. And this kind of has come up different times through the year, primarily from the college teams that are playing, let's say at the Long Cove tournament, and they rent houses in Sea Pines, and they have a recreational or a van that's bringing the players in, want to park it at a house, or we have a property owner that has an RV that would like to keep it at their house. And so we felt that the policy that's in place should stay, or we just lose control of how we're managing it. There's a company on the island called Hilton Head Guest Services. It's a local vacation promotion company, and they hand out these vouchers that have dollar values to them. And they have asked if we would consider allowing the gate fee payment of $8 to be utilized against these vouchers. It would be paid on a monthly basis at full face value. So we are considering that. It really seems to be something that would be easily managed. We have a couple of resolutions that we will address today, one being the gate entry policy regarding multiple owners of property. The other resolution is regarding a trial program to allow a gate pass sold after 5:01 p.m. during December and January to be valid the following day. This is due to many of the commercial businesses closing early during the 2 winter months. And I think it'd be a good thing for us to do. And so we will have a resolution to that effect. And thank you, and that's my report.
Carrie, why don't we go ahead, since you're on the agenda, why don't we go ahead and take up resolution 11B, which is an approval of an amendment to the gate entry policy relating to multi-owner decals and ID cards. Can you give us the background, and then we can, as a board, we can decide have some discussion?
I'm going to let Toby give the background on that, because we had a lengthy discussion on that was led by Toby, and so he's probably much better equipped than I.
Okay, Toby?
In the past, we have had an issue with properties that were multiply owned, and they were limited in the amount of property owner ID cards that we would issue. This has been a problem. You got a group of people that share this home, and so if we're issuing only 2 property owners ID cards per unit, then it causes problems. You have other owners that want to come and utilize the amenities of the resort to receive a discount for golf or food or whatever it may be, and they're not allowed to do that. And property owners that are or properties that are owned by corporations. So what we've done in this resolution is that we're going to allow up to 14 decals to be issued for multiple owned properties, either multiple owned or corporation owned, up to 14. The first 4 of the decals would be free. Anything above 4, they were required to purchase at whatever the rate of the decal is at the time. They would also be able to receive up to 14 ID cards for these properties as well.
I think, Toby, the resolution says only 4 ID cards. They get 14 decals, but only 4 ID cards. Wasn't that, Victoria, the understanding?
Well, I mean, that's fine if that's what your resolution is going to be, but the request is going to be our issue is that you've got more people asking for more ID cards. So you got to, I'll give you a prime example. We have one property there's 14 owners to it. So which of the 14 owners gets the 4 ID cards?
This is
I think the resolution is intended to give up to 14 decals and 14
for free.
ID cards.
And then
I think it really reads that way, Larry.
We don't charge, we don't have the ability to charge. Do we charge for ID card?
yeah, for a relative decal, we do. We
A
charge.
relative ID card. ID.
There is no such thing as a relative ID card.
Thing is a relative ID card.
We only charge for relative decals.
But they're gonna have to pay for the decal, which is currently $6.
Okay,
Yes.
then we'll need to we'll clarify the resolution. So the resolution before the board is to allow where there are multiple owners beyond two. This would be multiple families, corporations, partnerships. You can get 4 decals and IDs free, and you can get up to 14 additional ID and decals at a rate of $6. The current, whatever is the current guest family rate.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes.
Is there any discussion? Carrie, I assume you're moving this. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Anyone opposed? Is there any opposition? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, the resolution passes. Toby, you want to take up the second one, which is the gate extension?
I'll go ahead and do the gate extension, gate pass extension. Resolve the Community Service Association Board of Directors on recommendation from the Gate Entry Committee. Approve gate passes issued December 2020 and January 2021 after 5:01 p.m. be valid for the following day on a trial basis for 1 year.
And as Toby's indicated, the concern is that people may come in, find the shops are all closed, want to come through the next day, but they wouldn't if they were paying $8. They've already paid their $8 or $9, as the case may be. Is there any discussion from the board? Seeing none, Toby, Carrie has moved it. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rich. All in favor? Raise your hands, please. Any opposed? Seeing none, the resolution passes.
Very good.
Thank you. The committee, I know, worked very hard this month, and we appreciate their efforts. Governance, Mr. Paskey.
Yes, good morning. Thanks. We are getting back into the saddle using Zoom technology, has been reported. The governance committee is tackling a number of issues that I think will start to be formulated into some policy and procedure manuals and some recommended guidelines for the board to consider. We're deliberating the function, composition, mix, the charters for committees, how to engage the community, how to post minutes, agenda, things like that. So a lot of work going around improving and standardizing committee function. We're looking at relationships between board and management to make sure that our roles and relationships are well defined and how we do business and how we create agenda. We have a draft of some grids around board composition relative to mix and background and skills that can be used through the nomination process as maybe guidelines to target specific recruitment from people in the community to fill gaps, be it in legal or HR, marketing, whatever the need might be at the time. We're also looking to update some policies or recommend some updates around confidentiality, around conflict of interest, and then how we do orientation of new board members and new committee members. So it's a great committee. We're doing a lot of work. We've fell behind a little bit, obviously, with the virus, but we're coming back into it. And I think as the fall comes, you'll start to see more specific recommendations in these areas. That's my reaction.
Any questions for Jim? Thank you, Stu, government liaison.
Yeah, good morning, all. A couple of things at the county level. We're into the budgeting process. The county budget revenue shortfall will be about 8 million versus this past year, but they've come up with 8 million in reductions. And so it appears that we'll have a balanced budget going forward. We also have to approve the school board budget. Since they're so dependent on state funds and the General Assembly is not going to finalize their budget until early fall, there's just a temporary budget in place at the same levels of both revenues and expenditures for them. On the school district, since we approved their budget, and there's 3 different ways it's done in the state, and we're one of about 1/3 of the counties are like us, where the county council has to approve it. The school board hates that, and they from time to time want to approach the delegation on getting out from under it. We've had a discussion with them. I don't think the delegation will approve that. I think there's a halfway measure where we could authorize them to set their own budget within certain levels, what's known as Act 388. And then as the governing body, we would only have to get involved over and above that. So we'll see what happens and what the delegation wants to do and which way the school board wants to go. 3 million of the 8 million from the shortfall in revenues for the county comes from a $3 million reduction from the town. It's been a little bit in the paper about it, and it's called the sheriff's budget in Hilton Head. The background on that is some of the new folks that came in the last year ago essentially noticed that the town was giving the county, in round numbers, 3 million, and the sheriff's cost was 4 million. Therefore, they asked the town for the extra 3 million. I convened a meeting, and we, in the course of the discussion, the sheriff basically said he's providing a basic level of service that would not change regardless of how much money changes hands between the county and the town. And so the town, that led the town to then say, well, that's the voluntary contribution. And so therefore we're going to eliminate that, which they did this year. Now, the offset, part of the argument is Hilton Head is one of the few towns, only one of any size, that doesn't have a police department in the state. And some people think that therefore that's the reason that the town ought to pay. On the other hand, it's much of our policing is done by the Tobys of the world in the gated communities. And the flip side, the other side of that argument is that Hilton Head provides a lot of its own services on a voluntary basis compared to the rest of the county, thus reducing the cost for the county taxpayers. 2 biggest examples are the emergency medical service, which is provided for the county elsewhere, but Hilton Head does its own. And on the recreational side, the county only pays a very small amount compared to for Hilton Head compared to every place else. So anyway, there'll be a negotiation in the future, and what the town has offered, which is probably fair, is a 3-year phase in on a dollar basis, and to take over the remaining part of the recreational activities and to take over the roads on the island. And I suspect that that's what will happen next year. Still thinking that there'll probably be a 1 penny transportation sales tax in 2022, which means we pretty much got to be thinking hard about that in the balance of this year in order to do all the pre-work that would be needed to make that happen. As you may remember, I've said in the past, it's going to be heavily Bluffton. The opportunity for Hilton will be to get things in that we need to balance the referendum. The Sea Pine Circle, of course, jumps out. And so I think we all need to keep close on whatever might happen with that. Another item that I think is going to probably see is that some of the analysis of the county's been doing on the solid waste relates to what are known as the convenience centers. That's basically the dump and the recycling piece. And it's being abused by contractors. And so what we're probably going to see is some kind of a decal system that restricts it to residents and perhaps a limited number of uses per week. And so that's probably something that'll get implemented next year. I don't think it affects Sea Pines too much. Obviously, the recycling would continue. Another road-related piece relates to the 278 corridor, or if you will, the bridge replacement. The SCDOT should probably be coming forward almost any time. Not sure what the virus effect has been on their dates, but anyway, coming up with the preferred alternative. You may remember they put 6 out there. They added 3 more recently. It was actually kind of a misnomer. It replaced 3 of the others. They were like a 2.0 version of those. So there's still 6 out there that are in play, and we'll see what happens. There was a side issue to that relative to Windmill Harbor. They've always had a concern about the difficulty of getting in and out there and the safety aspects of it. Years ago, the county borrowed $7 million to fix that, designed it. Project got overtaken by the corridor piece and the SCDOT and the feds. The Windmill Harbor people were still pushing for that to be done under the argument that it might be years before the bridge replacement project would come along. I convened a task force of different engineers from different organizations. In the meantime, the bids for that came in at $10 million. So we had this little task force, and they came up with a $2 million solution that would solve the problem. I think what will happen is that will then be considered at the time that the bridge alternatives come forward. And it'll depend a little bit on the timing of when they think they would get around to the actual construction. The other piece of the bridge, which is big, is that the original thought was that it was about $240 million. There was the one bridge, feds had $40 million because it was failing old age. The referendum added $80 million. There's a request into what's known as the State Infrastructure Bank for $120 million. That was on the agenda a couple of months ago, but obviously got deferred under the current emergency. Best case is that they make that a grant, and then we're pretty much home free. Worst case is that, not that they would reject it, but the worst case is that they would just loan us the money, which means we still have to come back and figure out a way to pay for it. And we'll see what comes out of that. My view has always been, although a lot of people don't like it, is that probably the only realistic thing, if we don't get the last $120 million from the state, would be we'd have to go to some kind of a toll road to come on at about the time the Cross Island comes off. One or two other minor things. On Toby's comments about the difficulty of hiring enough officers, PJ Tanner has the same problem. They have shortages. I think that's probably true across the security community. I've believed for some time that we just probably need to bite the bullet and get out in front of it and address it through compensation. Two other quick items. On the stormwater piece, the county is looking at going to a regional authority with Jasper. The benefit and the reason for us is that a lot of the water flows in to us through Jasper, and we need to have a say in what happens there. As part of that, we would do it by watershed. Hilton Head would be its own watershed. I don't know whether the South End would be its own watershed within that. But the reason we're bringing this up is that the county has millions of dollars in the stormwater account. Russell talked about the problems that we're having with stormwater. I think we believe that the town owes us about $500,000. And it might be useful, Sam, David, Victoria, for us to roll up our sleeves, have a strategy session sometime, make sure we understand see if there's any possible way that we could intersect some of the current money that the county has on hand in its stormwater accounts for our particular problems. And lastly, the county was instrumental in supporting what's known as the Santa Elena project at the northern part of the county. For those that aren't familiar, the early Spanish settlements and capitals and forts for all of North America were actually on Paris Island 50 years before the Pilgrims got here. Doesn't get a lot of play because the English won and they wrote the history. But in any event, we set up a foundation a couple of years ago. It's had a good run of exploring the history, operating a history center. They're going to merge with the Coastal Discovery Museum and actually set up a museum over here. Reason for mentioning it is if we have folks that really have an interest in history, I'd be happy to talk with them, and we may have maybe some opportunities for people to get involved in that. But I think that's pretty much what's going on the government side.
Thank you, Stu. Any questions for Stu? Seeing no hands up, Rich Spear, you're on land use management.
Very good. I'll try to keep this relatively brief. Land Use Management Committee, I think, as everybody knows, is a unique committee because it is a joint committee with ASPO. The charter is in our package today for approval. A full-time person, Ryan Cash, who works for CSA and SAM, does the land use monitoring. And I have to say kudos to him, Sam. He's been extremely active. Only group as active as him is, I think, the committee. But Ryan has done an outstanding job. Between April the 9th and May the 13th, we issued about 55 violations of people, households, properties, residential properties that were in violation of the highlight of the covenants and our guidelines. In general terms, we have about 60 or so of those we issue on a monthly basis. About 50 or so are resolved on a monthly basis, and about 15 or so thank you letters have gone out to those people that have complied. To put this in perspective, I think it's important to understand we're dealing with about 1% of the properties that fall into this category. But if we're not diligent in this process, we'll end up with significant issues. And then we have a handful of properties, less than 10, that I would consider serious. One of those, as the board knows, we are pursuing legal action against the individual property. I won't discuss that particular property now, but we have engaged attorneys, as we know, to pursue this. And we're hopeful for a successful resolution of that particular activity. But the Land Use Management Committee is very active. It meets not on a monthly basis. I begin to think it meets weekly, but it meets on a regular basis. And I think it's done an extremely good job. As I say, we have about 60 or so every month that we're dealing with in terms of sending letters out. We have about 50 that are been resolved, and we do send out thank you letters. We do have the letters under review and the policy under review by legal counsel just to make sure we're in full compliance with the guidelines. But it's an extremely important committee to maintain the quality of the environment in which we live. I would like to get a simplified version of the monthly report that is prepared for us by Ryan, included in your board package, as does, for example, ARB right now. But there's an awful lot of data on spreadsheets that needs to get summarized into perhaps a more summary fashion for purposes of sharing this with the CSA board. And with that in mind, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions for Rich? Sam?
Rich, thank you for the comments in regards to Ryan, and I will work with Sandra and Ryan to develop a summary report for the board that we can begin submitting to the board on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think Dana and I will have a suggestion for you and Ryan, just because from the committee. So whatever you come up with, we'll be happy to look at and give you our comments. But you've seen the full report, and it's a series of spreadsheets and Excel workbooks, and that's probably not a very usable thing for the CSA board.
Very good.
Thank you, Rich, and thank to the committee for its work. JR, Maintenance, Enhancement, and Major Projects Committee. Well, hold on, we're gonna unmute you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You got it, you're good.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I think Russell handled most of the detail of what's going on in maintenance, but I would like to follow up on a couple of his comments, one of which was the drainage problems in the streets from Canvas back up to the original streets. Of course, they're 63 years old, and of course, they naturally would be the first ones that would fail. And so he's right on point with that project. Also, in regard to the sand buildup, the other side of that story is that the beaches that mostly got destroyed and all the fences that have been put up are getting the buildup that we expected and a lot sooner than we expected on the beaches. And so, as you can see, if you walk out there, the sand buildup on those dunes are just fantastic. So there's always another side to the bad part, but that's a really good part in this case. And probably finally, unless y'all have questions, where our committee is restrained from the things that we would normally be doing from a budget restrictions. We're working on the new budget and the items that we'll think we'll include in that budget. And since we have not gotten that far down the line to know what we can spend, we haven't put up the projects, although we have a number of projects that we want to implement. So until we get that, we'll just be mum on that, and we'll do it in the next meeting.
Thank you, JR. I can assure you that if the task force interim report is accepted by the board, you'll have a very busy committee with Sam and Russell. Any questions for JR? Seeing none, we'll move on to safety and security. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like all, we're trying to get ramped up, and we did meet on May the 6th. We also approved our committee charter. Many of the issues that have already been brought up by Toby or Victoria were our primary agenda. Only thing I'd like to add to that is that we have been trying to enhance our signage for bicycle safety, which has been primarily on the leisure trails, and then we have some other signage talking about bicycle safety and things that hopefully our visitors will pay attention to. We also talked about some issues with contractors that are on job sites as far as parking, trash pickup, whatever. And we decided we need to reach out to JR and ARB to try to take some action on that. And then obviously we'll be working with you, Mr. Chairman, and Sam and Toby, and in trying to look at budget restrictions and personnel enhancement for our security department to give Toby a little more resources to do his job going forward. And that's my report.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions for Bill Johnson on safety and security? Seeing none, we'll move on to short-term rental. Mr. Pardue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. The short-term rental committee met on Tuesday, May 19th. We were joined by staff members, Sandra, Amanda, Toby, and Sam. And we also invited Paula Scanlon to sit in our meeting representing the ARB. A month ago, the common wisdom, at least I thought, was that our short-term rentals would be down roughly 50%. And so we weren't worried too much about even Memorial Day weekend, but that just shows you what a good predictor I am. Because 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, things ramped up big time, and we were somewhere between 95 and 98% full for Memorial Day weekend. So our committee meeting, most of our discussions were on the thing that we like to talk about the most, and that is parking at the beach club. At least for the short term, the resort was willing to accommodate a rental guest, even if they weren't rental guests of the resort itself. and allow them to, for overflow parking at the beach club, to park at the plantation club. I greatly appreciate that, but that's meant to be just a short-term solution. And the fact is that by noon on Friday, even the overflow parking at the plantation club was totally full. Toby had come up with a really good idea in our meeting, and that was to approach the Hilton Head Prep to see if we could use more overflow parking at the Prep parking lot. Now, that's not ideal because then people have a walk to the beach, and there were no toilet facilities there. But so that worked particularly well, at least for the short term. Most of our discussions, though, were on trying to decide whether or not to, even though it was not our committee's decision, whether or not to open the trolley and how soon open the trolley and how to do it. There was a lot of discussion on how we could do the trolley safely. Different opinions of the committee that was then reported back to the executive committee and to our chairman and to the staff. And but instead of me going into more trolley issues, I understand that that's something that'll be discussed later in this meeting by Sam and the staff. And so I will leave it at that.
Thank you, David. Any questions for David? Before I move on, I think it's worth noting something Toby said earlier. We do get a lot of, I personally get a lot of questions at my chairman's email about the increase in tourism. But I think it's worth noting that we've gone from something in the neighborhood of 700 to 900 rentals to now close to 2,000. And so this is an issue that property owners are making decisions as to how to use their properties. And I think we have a new realism that we will have a lot of tourists or a lot of people who are coming to spend a week in weekly rentals. And it's a matter that as those of us who don't rent and are here full time really just need to accept and appreciate that other property owners have made different decisions as to how to use the property, and try and work with those, I'll call them tourists, but they're really they're kind of part-time resident. They come in for a week rather than months. So the short-term rental committee is doing an excellent job in trying to keep those who are renting informed on what our policies are, and then the renters providing that to the people they rent to. So thank you to the efforts of that committee. Strategic planning, Stu, I don't know if you've had a meeting, any further information on strategic planning?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we have had one meeting this year. I'll be very brief. Back in 2017, the board approved the strategic plan of the committee that Michael Tucker led at that time, very comprehensive. It had 3 goals in it. 2 of those related to governance and to finance, and those are obviously things that are underway in those committees at this point in time. The 3rd item related to the quality of life in the plantation. I've broken those into 2 groups. There's a series of items that I kind of view as being in the execution mode under Sam, and has to do with some of the gate flow issues, the stormwater, the community appearance, and community-wide events. That then left another group that, since we had some new members, we would carry those items over. And I've also gone out to the committee members to see if there's any that they want to add to for discussion. But what I anticipate in the next couple of weeks is we will reconvene. We'll have a list of items to debate. We prioritize them and probably have an addendum to the original strategic plan to incorporate those items. And so that's pretty much where we are. Sam is extremely busy, and he obviously has a major role in this, so we're being sensitive to his time. And so it's not an urgent item for us to meet, but we will get it done.
Thank you, Stu. That's the end of our committee updates. Before we move on to 2 very important matters that the board needs to discuss and consider, I do want to thank the board and those who are watching on the live stream for their patience. It's been a while since we've had all these reports, and thanks to COVID, we really haven't been able to get together and meet with the community. So I hope these have been informative and letting you know that while we are not meeting together, we are meeting on a regular basis and trying to keep things moving. And again, my appreciation to Sam and his staff for even that with the COVID problem, making it seamless in the way that services have been provided and things have continued on a regular basis in the community. With that, as folks will remember, last month, at the beginning of the year, I made it one of my goals for this board to find a solution to the critical infrastructure problems that we continue to hear about from Russell and MEMP, that we were not able to resolve with the referendum, but that we were not going to let another year go by of the kicking the can down the road. I think it's obvious that the formerly leaking roof is now failing. And so I appointed a task force that would look into how we would move forward in meeting our critical infrastructure needs, both on a revenue basis and a spending basis. I appreciate the efforts of that task force. They spent many, many hours over the last month, and I'm pleased that Sam is going to give a task force interim report for the board to consider. Sam?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get into the interim report, I do want to do a little bit of thanks to the community and to the many of the board members. When we started the task force, we asked the community for input, and we have received tremendous amounts of input from the community, ideas, recommendations, thoughts, questions. Finance committee has submitted a lot of recommendations and ideas, and we are working through all those, vetting all of those. They're all part of the consideration. So just wanted to note that, and we will continue to solicit that support as the task force continues to work. When we started the year, we had a budget that we projected to be balanced at the end of the year. Right now, we're projecting with our conservatively from our numbers from April, an $800,000 deficit. You heard the treasurer's report. We do think we are doing better than we predicted in April from a revenue perspective. Victoria, myself, and the other directors have gone into the operating budgets, and as the treasurer reported, we have found opportunities to defer hirings and to defer expenses. And so our goal is to still finish the year even. We are going to come in with a balanced budget at the end of the year based on where revenues are and expenditures are on the operational side. So I'm happy to report that. It does mean that we won't do some hiring in areas outside of security. Those areas we will continue to fund those areas, and we'll continue to hire those open positions. But in other areas, we're going to hold off, and we're going to do the things necessary to finish the year where we need to finish it. Having said that, there is opportunity for us to do some things that we haven't been able to do as it relates to infrastructure. Russell and his folks have done a tremendous amount of work in the first quarter of this year, and they have more work they'd like to do moving into the fourth quarter of this year. It's work that's been budgeted. And it's our intention to continue to do that work as it relates to infrastructure. But the issue that we're all facing, the community is facing, really relates to the critical infrastructure we have and the continued failure of it. And everybody is very familiar and very aware of that. And it really revolves around drainage and roads and trails and all those things that matter to us from an infrastructure perspective. Probably the most critical area right now is North Sea Pines Drive, in that area from the Ocean Gate back to the Beach Club, as we've already discussed at length. That road is failing. The drainage systems off of the road is failing. We've got to move ahead. We've got to do some things. So you heard a report earlier from our treasurer, Mr. Borghese, about where our community is in terms of the investments and that we have available to us. The finance committee, the board, the community has done a tremendous job in the past of handling investments. We're in a very good position from an investment perspective. And so it really is a decision. The board needs to make a decision, and based on the recommendation that we're going to make, that we move investments from sitting in an account and drawing very little interest on them to putting them into the ground and fixing the things that need to be fixed the most in this community. So that's what I would ask the board to consider, is allowing staff, based on the recommendation from the finance committee, to work with the MEMP committee and take $2.5 million out of our investment portfolio and move that to critical infrastructure needs of the community. And we would program those out over the next 18 months, get that money working by fixing the things in the ground that need to be fixed and making the improvements that need to be made right here and right now. And while we're doing that, the infrastructure task force will continue to work over the course of the summer on finding a long-term solution for the infrastructure needs of the community. The $2.5 million is just a start. There has to be additional resources put into the infrastructure for this community over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Infrastructure is always going to wear out. It's always going to fail. And we've got to have a much stronger, much better reoccurring source of revenue to take care of that. And that's what the infrastructure task force is going to come up with. We've done a lot of work over the course of the month of May. We're not ready to make a recommendation to the board yet for the long-term solution, but we are ready to make a recommendation for the interim solution for the next 18 months. And so, Mr. Chairman, that's what I would like the board to do, is allow us to work with finance and MEMP, take those dollars, move them from investments that we're holding now to investing them in infrastructure and begin to fixing some of the most critical problems that we have in the community and putting those dollars in the ground to work for us. Happy to answer any questions the board may have.
So if I can summarize, the past boards have not inappropriately said we're going to find a revenue source to fix our critical infrastructure and then spend it. The task force, which I strongly endorse, is suggesting that for the next 18 months, we take money that was otherwise invested at very low returns and spend it on infrastructure that we absolutely need, and that can probably get better returns just on the savings and expenses while we find the long-term solution to revenue. So it is a change in policy, but I think from the perspective of what the community wants in terms of the referendum support and for what the community needs in terms of failing infrastructure, I hope that I endorse and ask this board to endorse that approach. Rich Spear, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I would kill for a 10% investment right now return. And we're probably talking about saving 5 to 10% versus investing at 1%. I think it's a pretty straightforward assessment. And I would argue going forward, while costs are low now, costs will rise faster in future years. So I think it's a very smart recommendation from Sam for us to undertake. And it does give us time to reach the long-term solution that I think, as Sam has pointed out, is still critical. But in the meantime, earning less than 1% on our money versus 5 to 10% cost savings return on investment is a pretty clear strategy from my point of view. As I said, I'd kill for a 6, 7, 8% guaranteed investment right now. Maybe you guys are doing better.
Yeah, thank you. Jim Caskey, you have your hand up.
Yeah, and Sam, I applaud the plan, and having served and continue to serve on the task force, I think it is a daunting problem that we have. The one thing that maybe you could clarify a little bit is the way it's represented. We're taking the 2.5. You said it's a start, it's the beginning. I think from a communications perspective and a strategy, we need to really recognize that this is the very tip of an iceberg that goes very deep into this community. And we, the community, need to step back and really understand the level of investment that we must make as individual homeowners, commercial resort, to protect our own assets, our own homes, the value of those homes, because as Russell scored it at 2.5, that was shocking. And I think we need to make sure the community understands that. And second point is more of a question. If you could speak to how we still have latitude within our policies, that if there is a storm, I mean, we're hearing rumble, Amanda already talked about hurricane alert, that we have basically an insurance policy about the ability to do an assessment, correct? In the event that we do have a disaster. So I think it's moving balance sheet assets to really address a critical need at the very beginning, tip of the iceberg. But the second, we do have a backstop, correct?
Yes, sir, we do. And I'll let Mr. Borghese jump in just a second. And so by making this recommendation, we are in no way, shape, or form jeopardizing the community from a reserve perspective, related to emergencies, from a cash flow perspective related to daily operations, or just from a capital reserves perspective related to the policies that the Finance Committee has adopted. So that all three of those things are covered. And then there is the ability, if there is a named storm, to do an assessment for the damages associated with that. And Mr. Brigades can go into detail about that.
We have several sources of funds relative to emergency situations such as weather-related named storms. We do not have a commercial insurance policy that covers that. So what we do have is basically a three-prong. Number one, if you were to look at our total investment portfolio, even taking $2.5 million out of that money still leaves $6 or $7 million left that could be used for whatever purposes we really want it to use for, particularly in case of an emergency. Secondly, as Sam pointed out, and I think this was an amendment to our covenants back in 2007, I believe, in which the board on a named storm can have a special assessment on a board vote up to the amount of the current assessment. So at the current point, that's probably about $6 million, give or take. The last thing we do have is we have a line of credit with a commercial bank of up to $5 million for restoration of property after a named storm. So you put that all together, we're, $10, $15 million if we actually have to do that. That would put us back to zero, but the money's there. The problem is you never know what level of storm you would have. You never know what level of funding we would get. In Hurricane Matthew, obviously FEMA took a load off of our costs by removing all of the debris at a cost that really didn't cost us anything. And we still spent over $4 or $5 million for Matthew, which was significant, but not the most horrendous storm ever to hit the East Coast of the United States. So while you never know if enough is enough, I think we are well positioned in that regard.
And I hate to say it this way, but if a storm hits in October, we'll have some of the $2.5 million left because we will not have spent it all, and we will have a lot of other problems. But the bottom line is, I think, David, you're comfortable that this is the right approach to spending the reserves, and we still have lots of money to spend if there was a reasonably.
We have cash flow opportunities that we can initiate. That's clearly not. I'm not concerned about that at all. And I think we are fairly well positioned, and I think there's a point in time where you have to say, this is, as Rich Spirit indicated, this is a particularly good point in time to use cash resources that are just flowing from our normal maturity of investments, rather than reinvesting them in financial assets. The reinvestment needs to really be in long-term infrastructure that will save us money today versus having to do what we have to do anyway down the road. This is a no option, no brainer.
And to anticipate questions that we might have otherwise gotten from the community, this is a change in policy because the past boards had hoped that presented with the problems, the community would vote for the necessary revenue. I'm hoping sometime over the next 4 months, the task force will come up with a similar approach to raising revenue. But rather than wait till we do and then have to raise it, this board, I hope, will take the position that this is the best way to spend the money we do have on hand now. So I do want to recognize that we could have done it last year, we could have done it a year before, but the hope was that the community would come up with a better revenue source. We can't wait any longer for that to happen. Any other comments? Jim, I see your hand up.
Just, Larry, I assume we're probably going to need a motion on this?
I actually think I prefer to have a sense of the board, because if this is correct, then Sam's going to take to MEMP and then to finance the necessary changes in the budget. So we don't really need a budget amendment. I'm really looking for a sense of the board as to whether they want this to direct staff to take this approach. Any other, Bill Johnson, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Larry, I just want to say how much I support and endorse this plan. Also, when we talk about infrastructure failure, the drainage potential for a total disaster, safety, security, the need for more security officers, it just emphasizes so much that we have a revenue shortage, and the community at large has got to understand that we've got to address this.
Thank you, Bill. Any other comments, concerns? Then I'd ask for, by a show of hands, a sense of the board to direct, so I can direct staff to move forward with this plan. All in favor of taking this approach, please raise your hands. Is there anyone opposed? And Sam, you have your directions from the board.
Thank you all very much. We look forward to working with finance and MEMP and bringing some things back to the board that will begin to deal with those critical infrastructure issues, as well as finalizing the recommendation from the Revenue Task Force to deal with long-term funding of critical infrastructure.
Thank you. The next issue is the trolley program update. And this flows as much from the increase in tourism that we now see has come earlier than any of us anticipated. I want to thank the resort for the generosity they've shown over the last month, 2 months actually, and even a little bit in June. Unlike past where the policy would have been to restrict parking at both the Beach Club and the Plantation Club, they've generously allowed it now, even when we know that there was some short-term rentals use. But I think the time has come, and Sam and his staff believe the time has come to introduce the trolley program back into effect. But we also know that it's got to be done safely. And so a lot of discussion and debate has gone on with the short-term rental committee and within the staff as to how we want to do that. The board needs to decide, based on what Sam's recommendation is, whether we're going to have a trolley program. I then think we need to direct Sam to do it in the best way we can. Sam has some ideas that he'd like to share with us, but I think most importantly, we need to decide if we can have a safe trolley program to indicate, to let the staff implement it. So Sam, your ideas and how you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Toby, I'll ask you to be available because Toby and his team are the trolley folks. I will let you know that as things have evolved with the COVID situation, we really have gone from not having anybody in here needing or wanting to ride a trolley to many folks who need to ride the trolley and want to ride the trolley. But it's incumbent upon us to make sure that anything we do with the trolley is best practices within the guidelines that we receive from CDC, from South Carolina DHEC, and just general best practices as the COVID situation evolves for public transportation. If you had the opportunity or maybe were around the beach this past weekend and with our short-term rentals very close to full occupancy, you got to see the numbers of folks that were looking to get to the beach to enjoy the Sea Pines beaches, and it was overwhelming. And so it really can create a safety issue based on parking, folks trying to get to places they shouldn't be trying to get to. So it's really balancing the trolley versus the need of the community versus the short-term rental. And so what I'm recommending to the board, or ask for the board's consideration, is that we put the trolley system into service next week, beginning with the beach trolley. We've got to do some things to the trolleys to get them up and running. And basically what would happen is we would be looking to retrofit the trolleys so that first off, for driver safety, the driver would be enclosed and the plexiglass, plastic sheeting, skirting, so they would be protected from contact with folks riding the trolleys. The trolley itself would be limited to 50% capacity. So there would be a level of social distancing associated with riding the trolley and no more of the occupancy than 50%. We would require you to have a mask if you're riding the trolley. And so what we would do is communicate to all those, our short-term rental folks, to the community at large that if you're going to ride the trolley, we're going to require you to wear a mask to ride the trolley. If someone shows up and doesn't have a mask, our goal is to secure the masks that we can provide to them, but our preferred method is for you to come to the trolley prepared to ride the trolley with your own mask, but we are looking to secure the supplies if needed to give folks a mask so they can ride the trolley. But we will not let you on the trolley without a mask. We won't run the trolley. We are also going to be requiring or providing hand sanitizing stations, either where you get onto the trolley or on the trolley themselves. We're still working through the logistics on that. The windows will be open on the trolleys. The trolleys will not be enclosed, so there will be fresh air going through the windows. We will provide signage at the on the trolleys themselves, as well as at the trolley points of embarkation that say, hey, if you have any of these symptoms, please do not ride the trolley. And also please note that we are doing everything we can to keep you safe, that you are riding this trolley at your own risk. So I think by layering those things together and providing the 50% capacity with the additional safety measures and the masks and the sanitization, and then Toby and his team have found some industrial, for lack of a better word, I call them foggers, that can be used and that provide sanitation. You can sanitize the whole trolley and inside the trolley with a misting system, and we'll be doing that on a regular basis to the trolleys. I think with those things in place, that we can safely run the trolleys and begin to put them in operation, starting with the beach trolley, and then working through logistically getting the other trolleys retrofitted and getting trolleys back to something of a normal, full schedule over the course of the next few weeks. I would like to echo the chairman's appreciation, as well as David Pardue's to the resort for allowing us to use Plantation Club parking while we've been without trolley service. So that's our recommendation. We'd like to move forward with this, and I'd ask for the board's consideration of it.
Thank you, Sam. A lot of work has gone into this kind of planning, and there may still be additional approaches that Sam and his staff with Toby and David Henderson will take to protect to the maximum extent possible, reasonably possible, people who ride. Clearly, requiring a mask is going to be controversial because we know that seems to have become a controversial issue. But I think much like stores are doing it to protect the people, the driver and people in the store, I think that's something we should insist on. Similarly, we cannot guarantee anyone's safety at any time, and certainly this. And so people who ride will be riding at their own risk. I hope that the short-term renters who rent to people outside of the community will make that clear that, a better way to get to the beach may be to ride your bike or walk, but the trolley will be available. And we'll hope that we can do the best we can to protect them, but at least we will provide them an opportunity. I know this is controversial. It's not an easy subject, so I'm open to hearing what members of the board believe in terms of whether we should or should not run it on this basis. Rich? And unmute, please. We'll let us unmute you. You need to unmute, Rich.
Sorry, there we go. Sam, correct me. Aren't these trolleys larger than the previous ones?
Yes, sir. And Toby, if I get this wrong, please correct me. I think these trolleys are 35-person trolleys, 35-person seated trolleys, and the previous ones were 20, 22, 28. So these are a bit larger. Is that right, Toby?
The current ones are 35. The old ones were 24 passenger.
24.
And one other question. You're planning on running 2 of these, as I recall?
Yes, sir. We would, to start the beach shuttle, we would run 2 trolleys to start the beach shuttle as quickly as we can get them in service.
Thank you.
Any other, David Pardue?
Yes, just for clarification, we're only talking about running the shuttle or the trolley from lot 8. So that's what you mean by the beach.
Yes, sir.
From
lot 8, yes, sir, to start with, until we can get the others up, retrofitted, and figure out logistically how to move folks around and get them into service.
But I think it's fair to say that the goal is at some point in time, if this trolley is effective, to put the rest of the trolleys into service.
Yes, sir. That is the goal.
Okay.
Yes, okay. So the challenge now is just to get the word out communication wise to all of the rental agents and all the people who rent their homes to, you know, as you said, Larry, to encourage people to walk or bike when they can. But if they're going to ride the trolley, to bring a mask and to be prepared for maybe a little bit longer waiting time, even though if we have two trolleys, then the wait time shouldn't be too bad. And I just hope that people aren't abusive to our drivers, because it's going to be the driver who's going to have to, you know, I guess, enforce the 50% rule. So,
well, David, just like yes, sir, it will be the driver. However, I will say that Toby and I have had that conversation, and we intend on providing the appropriate level of security resources for the drivers to make sure that things flow safely and smoothly for them as we open up the trolley system, just like we did in working with the resorts at the Beach Club parking lot over this past weekend and this coming weekend.
Barry, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I certainly support it, and I really like the idea, Sam, of being proactive and having masks available, because sometimes the communications don't get to everybody, or they forget or leave them in their car, or whatever the case might be. And I'm hopeful that when people do get the masks and get on the trolley, they'll keep them on, because this past weekend, I'll tell you, when everything's wide open, there's nobody, very few people wearing masks at all. And I'm sure the governor might even open us up even more, you know, later this week. And I just think it's important from a health and safety standpoint that we establish a standard, a compliance standard, especially for our drivers, you know, who really have to deal with this, and for everybody else. So I'm very supportive of it. Thanks.
Any other comments, questions? Rich, again?
One statistic that I think, Sam, you shared before, last year we averaged, or Toby shared, I think we averaged 70% usage of the trolley a year ago. So if you've got larger trolleys, I don't think there's much difference when you say 50% in terms of actual capacity this year versus last year.
That's a good point, Rich. And I think Toby would tell you that the toughest times for the trolleys are when we have those unique events, either ending in a certain area, or we have a thunderstorm roll through where folks are trying to get back from one place to another. But yes, sir.
Any other comments, concerns? If not, I'd like a motion to approve, to direct the staff to initiate the trolleys. Carolyn, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Rich Johnson. All in favor of?
No, wait, just a clarification.
Jim?
Is it possible to include within that motion, Sam, your response about security so that we protect the driver and we've got some enforcement opportunity? Because I could see a real predicament on some people's behaviors, refusing the mask, trying to storm the trolley to get on it. Do we need to modify this plan?
I don't see that as being needed to modify. That's a staff responsibility.
Yeah, I think, Jim, I think the decision on the board is to run the trolley as safely and securely as possible, and to leave the staff how they'll do that. But if that's okay, Sam.
Well, the only thing I would ask is if Mr. Caskey would like to come volunteer to be the trolley attendant. I'll leave it to Toby then.
Toby will have some big guys with guns. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Very quickly, we have one other piece of business, which is the approval of the committee charters. The committee charters are the, I lost my place here. And the other list.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I see it. The committee charters of communications, gate entry, land use management, safety, and security as presented. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
A second?
Finance was in there as well.
Finance, I'm sorry, add finance in there as well.
Second.
So second from Mr. Richardson. All in favor? Any opposition? The motion carries. I want to thank the board and those who have been watching on the live stream for sticking with us. It is now 20 after. I know it's a long meeting, but I do want to provide questions. We will recess for 7 minutes to 22 after the hour, and if everyone can stay on, you can mute yourselves, move around, but we will be back in 7 minutes for questions and answers. Thank you.
I have a quick clarification, Sam, on the multiply owned properties that we're going to issue additional decals and ID cards. When does that become effective?
I mean, I think the action of the board makes it effective now. We'll move ahead with that.
All right.
Good morning. Going through them now.
Could you make sure that you're on mute for the audio for the Zoom meeting, David?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I apologize for the slightly longer delay. I admit that 2.5 hours sitting in a conference room was more than I could handle. So thank you for allowing the time for everyone. If the board can put themselves back on video, we will start with the questions. If Amanda, we didn't get that many questions, but we did get some very interesting ones, and I'm happy to respond. Before I do, I should note that a number of the questions and comments that were posed were suggestions as to how we might raise revenue. I can assure you that all of these are being forwarded to the revenue task force that was created and will be considered in that task force. There's really no answers yet, but I appreciate all those suggestions. And for those who are listening to the video, we welcome any suggestions you might have as to how we may raise revenue with the support of the community, recognizing that various means of raising revenue require different voting, and the hurdles are as high or as the suggestion is made. So thank you for all those suggestions. They really weren't questions, they were more suggestions, and we are passing them on to the Revenue Task Force. With that, Amanda, I believe there are a number of other questions that have been asked for the board.
There are, yes. So I will read those questions aloud. The first question is, are there discussions about implementing a special assessment due to the current emergency declaration?
Thank you for that question. We certainly would love to be able to have a special assessment if we could by the board, because we do know that a number of expenses were incurred by reason of COVID. Unfortunately, the covenants do not allow a special assessment other than for named storms. And so this COVID, while it was clearly an emergency, and in fact was both a national and state emergency, we don't have the authority as a board to do so. And we did not believe that it would be appropriate to go to the community and try and get a 75% vote. So that was not an avenue we could take. We were lucky to get the loan, which we hope will be relieved, and that $1.1 million should hopefully take care of much of the cost that we incurred by reason of the assessment of the emergency.
One clarification.
Sure, Sam.
There was no luck involved in that loan. Victoria Shanahan worked her tail off to get that loan. So
you're right.
And
and now working to get it.
And so work even harder.
Now I gotta work even harder to get it forgiven.
That's correct.
Thank you for that question. Amanda, next question.
Thank you, Beth. Thanks to all of you. The next question is related to daily gate passes. The discussion of daily gate sales provided only the percentage declines over the past few months. What is the actual dollar loss?
I'm going to turn to Victoria. Victoria, can you provide that information? Rough
Are they asking just for the dailies?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Just for the dailies for year, as of yesterday, we're down $357,000 over last year.
Thank you. Victoria. Amanda, next question.
Question is, what measures are CSA or has CSA taken to reduce expenses?
Sam, you mentioned that as part of this approach to the long-term, the short-term, that we were going to cover the operational shortfalls that we expected to occur by cutting expenses. Do you want to go through some of what's been involved?
Happy to do that, Larry. We are outside the area of security and safety. We have a number of open positions that we have chosen not to fill, and that will cover a large percentage of the anticipated $800,000 shortfall that we have. In addition to that, there are a number of operational contracts that we have related to services that are not take or pay contracts, they're pay as you go contracts. And so if we choose not to use those services, we don't pay for those. So we are not using those contracts, specifically in some areas of maintenance, unless it's absolutely necessary. And we will defer using those contracts until later in the year if our revenues have recovered, at which time we can match our revenues with the expenses we need to incur by using those service providers. So those are really the two areas. on the operational side is the keeping headcount at current levels on non-public safety or non-security employees, and then deferring engaging in contracts until the end of the year. We know where our revenue is going to be.
And I think you've emphasized it. Those are based on the worst case projected revenues. If revenues in fact pick up as they may, and we hope they do.
Yes, sir.
Then you can fill and fill back.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That's based on what we know today as it stands.
Next question, please.
Next question is related to the trolley operations. The question is, why not charge for the mask for somebody coming onto the trolley?
Sam, we're going to provide the masks free. Why not? Why aren't we charging?
The goal is to limit contact with the drivers or any other attendant that may be there. And so the thought is that it's opposed to exchanging money and masks and those things, to have the masks laid out in a way that allows for very limited contact and interaction between the driver. Charging for that or having the driver to collect dollars really defeats the purpose of putting the driver in the enclosure and protecting them through that enclosure. So that's our goal.
And I think it's probably worth noting, I assume that if you were to charge $1, you'd have people coming with $20, you'd need change, there's a lot of money involved. As you know, we have the security at the gate for that, but to put someone at the one end or the other of the trolley would probably, it would be an administrative nightmare.
Plus the fact, how many dollars are we really talking about?
Yeah.
Can't be that much.
Yeah. But thank you for that question, and it's a good question. I'm glad we could answer it. Thank you, Amanda. Next question.
Absolutely. The next question is also related to trolley operations. The question's more specifically about the cost to revamp the trolleys, to retrofit them for the COVID operations. Where are these specific funds coming from?
They'll be paid for out of the general operating accounts associated with the trolleys.
It's worth noting that we will be reimposing the budget included, and we will be reimposing the $2 surcharge on the weekly fee. Is that right?
That hasn't been voted on.
We didn't.
You didn't vote on it.
No.
Then, if that surcharge is put back in effect, that will cover some of the cost.
But we haven't been running the trolley, so there's money.
Yeah, normally we would start running the trolleys a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
A month ago.
Easily
a month ago.
So from an expenditure, a budget perspective, there's dollars there that haven't been spent in normal operations. We would just use those dollars to do the retrofits and things.
Thank you, Sam. And thank you, Victoria, for reminding me what we have that we didn't do. Next question.
The next question also about the trolley operations in light of COVID. Will the trolley drivers be routinely tested for COVID in some way each day?
At this time, we do not have any plans on testing the trolley drivers or any other CSA employees that come into contact with the general public.
Yeah.
Next question.
Next question is related to general communication and education to visitors within Sea Pines, and it is, who is responsible for educating new visitors to Sea Pines on all of the things related to Sea Pines, bike safety?
That's an excellent question, and it's one that I get at my chairman's email on a regular basis, and the answer is typically the same. Sea Pines property owners are responsible for educating their guests, whether they are renters of their properties, family members who come into the community, or friends. We do provide at the gate the gate fee provides things with, for example, when there was a self-quarantining requirement, we included that with our gate fee, with our gate passes. In addition, the short-term rental committee has put together a very nice set of rules and regulations for renters, which we provide to all people who rent and ask them to prevent to their renters. In addition, if you are on the bike paths now, you'll see signs that ask you to socially distance. If you're at Tower Beach, you'll see signs that point out where you should enter and exit, and also talk about COVID-related issues. When it comes to conduct of renters, the best we can do is hope that the people who you rent to are advised as to what is best behavior. And if not, they may hear from our security force if they truly are unruly. But CSA does the best it can by providing the information to our property owners. And after that, there's not much more we can do except enforce the rules as people are violating them with the limited security force we have. So I hope the message is out that if you are renting your property, it's incumbent on you to do the best job you can to inform your renters of what we in Sea Pines expect them to, their conduct to be.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Larry. The next question is related to what looks like pending litigation questions and questions related to the current public Beaufort County records show CSA is a defendant in 9 major lawsuits. So the question is related to an update on pending litigations.
We are in fact actively defending and in one case prosecuting litigation, but and they are being done through counsel, reputable counsel, and each counsel has advised us that we are not to discuss the pendency of those litigations while they're pending in public forum. We do have executive sessions to keep the board actively informed, but those we've been advised by counsel not to discuss those in the public. So that's the best I can give folks. Whatever's on the public record is in public, and if it isn't in the public record, we're not discussing it.
Thank you, Larry. The last question that we have is related to the property owner decal service that we're currently providing online. The question is asking, why can't the decals be mailed out to property owners versus being picked up in person, which is the option that we have at the moment?
Toby, that's in your department. I guess the question is they can go online. Why can't we mail it to them?
Yeah, we tried this in the past. Decals get lost in the mail, then it turns into a security issue. I mean, if we're mailing a decal, they obviously don't need it where we're currently at. If they are coming into town and it's going to be after hours or a weekend scenario, they can make special arrangement with Brian in the office. We can leave the decals in our dispatch office and they can swing here by the office and pick the decals up. But we don't currently allow for the mailing of decals.
So it truly is a security issue. But we will make whatever arrangements are necessary for someone coming in to get it when they need it.
Yeah, we will.
That was the last question, Larry.
That was the last question. Well, again, thank you all for what has been a long meeting, for sticking with us. I hope it was informative as it was for the public, as it was for the board and me. And with that, we're adjourned and recessed. Thank you all.
Thank you, board members.